Today, we're going to talk about options and real estate. Earlier, we talked about time value of money and the effect of cash flow in and out and the passage of time. Let's take it one step further and add some leverage.
So it's way different than a typical cap rate or return on investment, ROE, return on equity, ROA, return on asset, because in that case, you have different cash flows with the time value of money and different returns at different dates. So coming up with the exact yield or rate of return is a lot more complicated. So why would we do it? So I'm going to take a look at an assemblage, and I'm going to do this to understand why we do it and why this is a valuable tool. So let's look at here. These are 10 acres each in gross, but you can see there's some streets over here. So let me zoom in and let me just adjust this just a little bit. Yeah, like that. Okay. So these are streets. This was 10 acres. If you look at the boundaries like this, but because when you have a piece of land, the city wants you to dedicate the road. This one is undedicated. This one has dedicated. And when you have 10 acres and you dedicate the road here and here and here and here, you lose a half an acre on each side. So you end up with, and let's just say there were 4 lots, they're 2 acres each, not 2.5 acres, even though it's 10 acres. They're going to make us do that. So if we want to create some large real estate, something, we may need to get control of all this property to make an industrial park. So that would make it 40 acres in gross. But the main reason is why we want to do this is if we can eliminate this street, we won't have to build it. And then we will have more land because this boundary will come to this side right here, and this will come to here. So we'll have more net acreage. And that's the name of the game. As we tie this up, land is bought and sold on gross acreage. We want it to be net acreage. You'll have more land. The other thing is called a setback. So whenever you have borders on a city street, they're going to set you back. You can't build as big a building. So if your property line is here, your property, you may only be allowed to build this because you're going to have a setback here and here and here, etc. So by getting rid of these streets, we get rid of the setbacks. And the other thing that we're going to get rid of is called offsites. Does anybody, by show of hands, know what an offsite is? An offsite is curb, gutter, street lights, sidewalks, fire hydrants, traffic controls. That's lots and lots and lots of money to do that for a developer. So if we can get rid of not having to build curb, gutter, sidewalks, street lights, undergrounds, all in here and put these all together, we're going to have a much bigger property. We're going to have less setbacks. We're going to have more net acreage, and that's going to yield a much bigger building. So the overall rate of return is going to be huge. But how do you get control of all these properties when you have all these different owners and they want so much money? And so that's why we're going to zoom into right now how to do this and how to make it by using options. So the first, this is a real parcel map. This is in Las Vegas. This is a freeway on-ramp. And if we look here, you can see exactly, this is 2.07 acres, 2.19. These were 10-acre lots to here, but because of all these streets here, so what if we could get this property and this property and this one and this one and this one and this one and put these all together and make one giant industrial park and be able to do those 4 or 5 things I mentioned. A, get rid of the streets, so you don't have the offsites, you don't have the setbacks, you get more net acreage out of this, way bigger building, so forth and so on. And so how do we do that? And also keep an eye, because this is about investments in our Bagel Watch, our ROI, and so forth and so on. So let's just zoom in for a second, a little closer here. This is a future off-ramp. And this Fan Trust, this big Amazon building, Prologis built building here. These are all big buildings. This is the new off-ramp that's coming. We want to assemble this, and you can see all the streets that are in between. This is a new plan to create a major interchange, and these are the parcels of land looking at this, which could be a giant truck stop or big assemblage or a nice big building right here. So that's the plan and what we want to do exactly with this. This will be all these off-ramps, and there's lots of buildings and things going on. Here's what it looks like from the big picture. New off-ramps coming. These are all the different owners and different parcels in here. And my job is to create as much value as possible, but it would cost lots of money to buy all these properties here. So I've been doing this for 32 or more years, and I'm going to bring up what a real option looks like. Okay, this actually is a real deal that I did. in 1988. So how do we buy an option? How do we create this? How do we get ourselves into it? This was a way different parcel than the example I showed you, but I needed to buy a certain property and I didn't have the money. It was 1988. And so I studied law a little bit and I drafted this way back in 1988. And you can see there's name of the parties with assignee. So those of us that are studying realize the power we have. And I became the optionee because I was receiving the option that was being granted to me from the optionor. And I offered $1,000, $1,000 of option money, just like in our stocks. The legal description is there, and then we come up with an option period. There's an execution. It was going to begin and end basically on July 31st, 1989. Now they changed it. They countered me at $2,500, which was fine by me because this was huge leverage. How do I tie up $150,000? It's right after 1987 when the market crashed. You have Paul Volcker doing this, whatever he did in 1983 and 84. And now I want to go and tie up, as a kid, this big industrial land, and with $1,000, and they said no, and then it got tied up. So I wanted to show you, you can apply this to real estate. So once I have the option, how do you exercise it? Well, just like in the stocks, you can flip the contract or you can push the button and take possession of the stock. Here's how you exercise the option. There's a price, $150,000, and then a closing date by opening escrow, closing costs. So you could see, even though it was 32 years ago, and there's the kind of the signature, it's notarized. Once that happened, then we had an amendment. Here it comes a year later, January 10th, 1990. And now we have terms. Buyer shall execute a note secured by a deed of trust on the property in the amount of $100,000. With 9% interest. That was a deal after Paul Volcker. Trust me, even though it sounds crazy now. The 2-year note and the first payment installment 1 year after the close of escrow. Annual payments. This is an incredible amount of leverage where $1,000 ties up $150,000 property. I get a year, year and a half, almost 2 years, and then I'm able to exercise it, and the seller is to carry with annual payments. I don't even have payments for another year. And this is an incredible rate of return. Now, I just want to make sure, are we all on the same page so far? Are there any quick questions or clarities?
Mark, this is Victor. So you tied up the property for 8 months for $2,500. Is that correct?
Yeah, or something like, and the certified thing to make sure they got notice, and a copy of the check and the bank statement to show that they actually put the money in and cash the consideration. So all the little details, and then the extension of it as well.
During that the first year and even in the second year option period, did you have the option to exercise that in the interim time in case you found a buyer and you could flip it that fast and make money on it?
That's a great question. And the answer is absolutely, because if we go back to the other screen, it was my name or assignee, and you can always exercise up to the date. So any day up to that, you can push the button to exercise, and I had the full right of assignment. So I could have handed the rights to my contract to another person for a fee.
I wanted to ask you too, Mark, doing that.
I was able to take the right of possession, which means I could lease it out. And I did lease it out to a trucking company.
Right.
No way. Land. So I had the right of possession. So not only did I have just $2,500 that first year, now $1,000 or $2,000 a month was coming in because I had the right of possession. Absolutely. So you want to be that much forward thinking on leverage, how many dollars in and when, how many dollars out, right of assignment, right of transfer. And then there's another thing, going back to Bill's question and yours, Jeff, how about the right of entitlement? So I could take it through the zone change while I'm sitting there collecting cash to increase the value of the property. So it ended up getting zoned industrial, which more or less doubled the value of the property. This was the cash flow machine. That, and also the fact that the option money was being applied to the purchase price. So it wasn't even money really spent knowing I was going to exercise it. So it wasn't a loss of money. And yes, it was the first year I didn't realize how tremendous this asset was. And then all of a sudden, it was like, oh my gosh, I could also rent this out to trucks. So what I prepared for the group is that was an old option. We didn't have word processing. We didn't have anything like that. So this is what we use today. And I drafted this one a few years ago. What a modern option looks like. So this is an option agreement between me and Leo, Lox, Eggs, and Onion. We are the Bagel Wash and the Schmears. So the seller is Lox, Eggs, and Onions, just to put a fill in there. I did it for $25,000. I'm fast forwarding. In this one here, all the questions, the optionor grants the optionee, me, an exclusive option to purchase, hereinafter described as the legal description, the words parcel, plot, vacant land, and it includes on-sites, off-sites, improvements, entitlements, hereditaments, utilities, and all the other terms and conditions. The $25,000 is applied to the purchase price. What is real property? In this case, it's 87,120 square feet, which is 2 acres. It's an APN number. I can attach the legal description. I make sure it's very clear. It's got an APN, a parcel number. It's got a copy of the parcel map. It's got a copy of their deed. As I showed you with my little, you don't leave anything to question. In terms of the option, I just made this one. You can see it's May 20th next week for 1 year to May 21st or extended. Then there's exclusivity. They cannot grant another option to other people. I have an exclusive option. I wanted to share that. There's a built-in extension. Those are my leveragees out there. Major, major, major leverage. I get a whole second year by paying them $25,000 applied to the purchase price. How much are my real estate taxes?
0.
Thank you. How much of the interest that I'm paying on the loan? This is 0 because I haven't exercised. That's after I exercise with a seller carry. What's my cost of financing one more time?
0.
0. What's my real estate taxes?
0.
And if I got the right of possession and I could lease it, I'm going to have ROI on my $25,000. So you have a little kind of deal. So let me go to the next one. Default of or non-exercise. And then I go into here, what constitutes that? What happens if the seller or the optionor defaults? Do I have the right of specific performance? Yes. Can this be recorded? It becomes a legal document. It's on the title. It can't be snatched up. And then if I do exercise, what events happen? Now, when we do our stocks, you can take possession of the stock. In this case, I become optionee, purchaser, and optionor becomes seller. Different relationship. And now we have an escrow that opens with First American Title. Escrow papers, I talk about the closing costs. Within 30 days, I have to open the escrow. What did I just create? Leverage, another 30 days. And then once escrow is open, how many days to close?
45 days.
Another leverage point. Everything being done here is incredible leverage to the 10th degree. I want everybody to see that. Even in the beginning, when I did this one, exclusive option, right? $25,000 paid to optionor within how many days here?
15.
Another leverage point. How many dollars out of my pocket for the first 15 days?
Nothing.
0.
0. This is an exercise on leverage to the 25th degree. So,
But Mark, why they would agree to something like that? If they want to sell, they want to sell.
Well, at the time, we had just gone through a little recession, the stock market crash of 87. It was sitting there. It was doing nothing. And here I come with something, and they took it. You put it out there. Even if I had to go to $10,000, I would have. You throw something out there, let them come back. They said, no, your $1,000's not enough. I want $2,500. Like, okay.
So did you have to approach quite a few properties before you found somebody to want to sell like that?
Well, I wanted this one in particular. And that's going to go back to, remember in the other one I showed you, there's a freeway off-ramp coming on the one I'm working on now. So I knew I had to get this property. So I'm relentless. This is relentless pursuit. I'm like a bulldog that just bit into your arm. All right. Anyways, the relationship changes from optionee, optionor to purchaser and seller. Escrow is open. There's extreme leverage. I have 30 days to open escrow. I have 45 days to close the escrow. That's 75 days. How much am I paying in finance?
0.
How much am I paying real estate taxes?
0.
I have the right to finance this or seek an outside party. Any existing leases are canceled. Purchase price $500,000, $100,000 down, $1,000 secured by a note at 5% interest. Sounds expensive, but because of all the terms I'm giving, give something back. It doesn't matter. It's probably going to get flipped. Installments of interest only on this note, maybe 1 year before the first payment is there. Warrants not to subordinate. Late fees, 15%. You know why I put that in there?
Because it doesn't matter. You're not going to be late.
There you go. Full payment. It's long gone. Adjusted purchase price, representations of the parties, no brokerage if necessary, addresses for notices, fixtures, and anyways, at the end of the day, all the other gobbledygook, and that's my spiel. So I wanted everybody. Oh, I got one more board I prepared for everybody.
And Mark, people buy homes like that. Sometimes they rent, and if they want to buy it, they can exercise the option to buy.
Yeah, that's a great point. I'll talk about that in a moment, Ken. Lease option. Okay. So what's the benefit? First of all, the assemblage, you have to see this. You get more net acreage. We talked about that. You reduce your setbacks, no off-sites, larger buildings, win-win-win, landowner, building owner, user. This is a grand slam to put a 40-acre industrial park together, like the one I just showed you. You ask, why would a seller do that? Well, when I'm doing this, let's just say the seller wants $500,000 for one of those lots. I might offer him $550,000. Say, tell you what, you're a little high. I'll give you $550,000 and give you $50,000, knowing I could turn that property into $800,000 because I am assembling. So going back is like, why would somebody do that? Offer more than they want. You get time. Remember, this is time, value, and money last week, and it's so important. I stress and stress and stress. On the time, value, and money, it's the time that's more important. So if somebody wants $500,000, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to offer you $550,000. And they're like, whoa, $50,000 up front. I need a year to close it, and I'm going to entitle it, and I'm going to make it worth more. And that's how I get these deals and how I'm able to tie up this whole thing. Maybe I could tie up 10 or 15 of these acres with 125,000. And then, of course, when all this comes into play, I created millions in value, just no offsites. This is hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars. Having reduced setbacks, buildings that are 12, 15, 18% larger, more net acreage. So when I get it, I bought it as 2 acres. I'm going to end up with 2.5 acres. And when you deal with land, it's $10 a square foot. A half acre is $200,000. Do I mind putting $50,000 extra on an option contract that I have 2 years to close? Absolutely not. Anyway, that's my thing for today. Going back to Ken's question, sometimes you have lease option. Sometimes you see that in residential. So if you are basically optionee, the one that's going to get the option so you can close it later, a portion of the rent that you're paying might be applied to the purchase price. So if you tie up a condo for $300,000, you have a lease option. Maybe you spend $10,000 for the right of the option. Make sure it's applied to the purchase price if you're the optionee. And then maybe if you rent the place for, let's say, $2,000 a month, maybe $500 a month of that, or $700 a month, whatever you can negotiate, or maybe the whole thing is applied to the purchase price. So as the optionee, you're paying rent, but you're really not. You're lowering the basis because it's all being applied. So knowing how to do this and how to use your contracts and your leverage is a critical skill in real estate. Yeah, and sometimes you find it. Sometimes it's an estate sale, a death sale. They haven't figured it out. It's going to take 2 years before they do, and you can get the lease option. Anyways, the point, all I want to make sure is everybody knew that this is a tool that you want to have, know how to use it. And if you're in industrial park development, which is my specialty, you especially want to know how to do this. You have to see the highest and best value, what it is. You're always buying them what it is. In this case, it was vacant land. And then you have to be smart enough to say, okay, this is what's going on. 4 houses, an empty lot, and a mobile home. And if you know you can get R4 zoning, R5 zoning, you're near downtown, and that's 20 to 25 units an acre, and you can go up 6, 7, 8 stories, you know that there's a much higher use. And that land collectively, because you need enough width and depth to go with your height, could be worth substantially more. So it just depends, why are you doing this and what's it going to take to assemble. That's why we went to assemblage before, is how do you put all those together for a much higher and better use. If everything is lot 1, 2, 3, 4, little 2-acre lots with the fire code, with the parking code, with the screening code, with the setback code, I can maybe build 30% on a 2-acre lot, and that's maybe 25,000 square foot little building. But if I put all these together, get rid of these roads, save all that money, and I end up with 36 to 40 total acres on it, maybe my build out's going to be about 42% ratio, if I can get that high, of building a lot ratio. And because I got a building, I can go vertical. So we all know what's going on in the market. The bigger you set your footprint, the more vertical you can go. In this case, for Amazon and distribution, we want 50 to 55 foot tilt ups, which act like 4-story building warehouses with all those conveyor belts in and out. And the tenant, Amazon or whoever, going to get basically 4 times the square footage than the footprint. So this is huge. So using options to create intense and incredible leverage and real estate value.
Mark, I have a question for you. how you go and find those lands, especially 30 years ago? What motivated you to go to Vegas to buy 30 years ago?
That's a great story, Zeb. Thank you for asking. You know, I was working in a hotel as a cook, and somebody said, "Hey, kid, you should buy land." And I'm like, "Okay." And then somebody said, "Yeah, you should buy land that's for a factory." And I'm like, "Okay." And then somebody said, "Go downtown and figure it out." So I went downtown. They said, "You want M land? You want to be near a railroad track?" I'm like, "Okay." So I pedaled my bicycle out in the first couple of deals down the railroad tracks, and I was like, "Okay, I'm just going to specialize in this M1 style land." That grew and grew and grew. Got these books, and that became my little niche. It was good because I could not become a realtor because I was still on a bicycle. It doesn't work out so good trying to be a realtor in a hotel when you're on a bicycle. But finding industrial land and waiters and cooks and busboys and bartenders and dealers that wanted to be my partner in an LLC, back in those days, it's called limited partnership. Those were plenty. Could copy things. Well, back then it was called mimeograph. We didn't have copy machines. But anyways, thank you, Zev. That's kind of what got me started.